Jesus Freak here, and it's been about 12 hours as of the time I'm shooting this video. Not that it matters. I ran into a couple Jehovah's Witnesses at the bus station on my way back from taking care of some business on the other side of town. Not quite Ollie's other side of town, but other side of town. Now, as of late, their strategy seems to have been to ignore me, but these two didn't. And were a bit more active than they usually have been as of late. Anyway, for the most part, I think I managed to keep a step ahead of them, which is unusual. Usually they manage to trip me up somewhere, and I wind up not being able to really mount a comeback. They tried to trip me up with their statement that God must always operate through an organization. And I said, there's multiple groups that consider themselves to be this organization. And they're like, well, you know what they say, you'll know them by their fruits. I said, well, yeah, you'll know them by their fruits. Of course, we took that exact phrase to interpret exact different directions about the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, because they took it for and I took it against. And that kind of double meaning trick is something I do a lot. Sometimes I make an active effort to get out there. I'm just up the street from the bus station, and they visit it often. Different groups. They'll send a pair there to handle the bus station for a shift, and then they'll switch off with another pair. They got this mobile rack with witness propaganda. Which is usually relatively empty, but they actually had stuff in it this time. So I guess most of the people were, trying to evangelize at the bus station and didn't really want to do it. And these people were more into it. They also seemed pretty well armed. And, of course, I always have my pit minion with me. And they're looking through it, and they're like, this is a newer edition that might not have what we're looking for. I said, if you're looking for something in the marginal notes, it's probably actually going to be there, because it's a Cambridge Bible. They didn't find what they were looking for in the marginal notes, but they pointed me as, there's several places that they tend to point people to. I guess they find it easier to handle verses where they can do this without needing to rely on the marginal notes. But I pointed at him out, for example, that, my Bible did have the original translator notes from the 1611. They love to point to Psalm 83:18. For obvious reasons. And me being me, I remember a lot of the times they'll point to somewhere that they like to point to. I had one person, and about a couple of years ago, actually pointed to Jonah 1:9 because there's a note there in the original printings, not there in this one. This has a different note because it has a Nelson reference suite instead of the original reference suite. But, because they love to point out places where the name appears. And, of course, I brought up the ASV because that used to be, before they came out with a New World, they preferred to use the ASV for the obvious reason that it always used, Jehovah this, Jehovah that. And they say, people took the name out. I said, they were so afraid of abusing the name that they decided that not to use it. And in fact, the verse that says, shall not take the name of the Lord in vain, there is an interpretation in Aramaic. I think it's even pre-Christian, and it says, you shall not speak the name of the Lord. Because, that was the interpretation of the interpreters. And this is why the Jewish people lost the pronunciation of the name. I believe it was maintained through the Samaritans. Now, the Christian church has been ambivalent. Sometimes we have been of the idea to keep, pronouncing the name, and sometimes we've been of the idea to, maintain the ancient tradition of using the word for Lord instead. And maybe I sound a little, paranoid. I tend to stick to the traditional, don't say the name, say Lord instead. Because it's just, Besides, the idea of taking the Lord's name in vain, using it for things it shouldn't be used for, ancient people thought there was a lot of power in one's true name. And that's why there were so many safeguards on uttering the name of a deity. Which, as we know, there's only one actual deity. I tend to be a bit of a sponge, and I'm well familiar with the little g God stuff in Jehovah's Witness theology. But since I'm not really properly armed to combat them on that front, I haven't tried. I mean, the obvious thing is, the whole matter of hey, you can't say, hey, Jesus is just little g, a God. That's not what, I don't care what you think it says. I don't care what your New World abortion and tells you it says. That's not what John 1:1 is saying. But the other is, they take that one verse where Paul calls Satan the God of this world to mean that Satan is a literal deity. But you see how I said it, I said the God of this world with scare quotes. This world, this corrupt, evil world, treats him as if he were God. So to the world, he is God. But in reality, he's not. Thus, the God of this world. It's sarcasm. And of course, that kind of stuff doesn't come out very well in print. But like I said, they go around saying that because of this verse, that Paul's saying that Satan is a literal God. And there's only one God, and therefore, or it can't be Satan. So that falls apart because it fails the laugh test. I think they almost tried to steer me into saying I believed in annihilationism. I basically tried to derail that right away. You see, a lot of these Millerite groups, and it's not just Jehovah's Witnesses, I think the Seventh-day Adventists are the same way. They believe that at the final judgment, those who were evil are simply de-existed. But that's not what Jesus says. Neither is that mentioned as even a remote possibility anywhere else. The idea of annihilationism goes against everything that's ever taught about the final end of the wicked in the New Testament. Now, they do make the point that a lot of earlier translations mess up the definition, the translation of words by translating two different terms as hell. where one of them refers to the underworld abode of the dead, so to speak, and the other is a metaphorical reference to a trash dump that actually existed at one time. And let's be fair, our understanding of hell owes a lot to this misinterpretation. But on the flip side, if you're going to replace one misinterpretation with an even greater misinterpretation, then you're worse at the end than you were before. And they make a lot of misinterpretations. A lot of people make misinterpretations. A lot of mythology originates with misinterpretations. And mythology's mythology. It's false. It's lies. But this is truth. Jesus freak out.